officially call the meeting to order. And we all know each other, but it might be interesting to piggyback on what we've been informally talking about and have each one of us share something of interest. Not necessarily dealing with snakes, but anything that pops into your mind. And I would just like to say that the most angry I have ever seen a snake was on a Sierra Club hike that was being led by Mary Ann Reese, who's the chapter chair of our Sierra Club chapter. And she was leading a hike through a very tall grassy area with beautiful wildflowers on either side, in amongst the grass and off in the distance. And she did not notice that there was a rattlesnake on the trail, and she stepped on it. And the person behind her said, "Watch out," just as her foot was coming down on the snake. And she must have stepped close to the head. If she had stepped on the tail, I'm sure the snake would have whipped around and bit her. But it was not able to bite her, and she made probably set close to a world record in standing jump, or whatever, broad jump, because she leapt away from the snake about 4 or 5 feet and landed. And of course, the snake immediately coiled up and was extremely angry and rattling like crazy. And she was the leader of the group. The rest of us were on the other side of the snake. And nobody wanted to get anywhere near that snake. It was a good size. It was not an 8-footer like Walter was talking about, but I would say it was probably 5 feet long, and was formidable in size. And finally, it decided to crawl off the trail. We tried yelling at it and, try to scare it off, but not getting very close. And finally, it crawled off the trail into the tall grass, rattling all the way. That snake never stopped rattling for the next 10 minutes. And we could see the grass rustle and the rattling get a little bit softer as he got farther away from us. But boy, that was one angry snake.
Wow.
So that's my little story. Walter, do you want to be next with whatever you want to?
Oh, well, I'll just give one little tidbit of information about rattlesnakes. And that's that they don't have any ears.
So our yelling didn't help.
They have very rudimentary bones in their head, which don't even look like they function. And so that means that they can't hear their own rattles. They don't even know that they're making sound.
Wow.
So it's just a reflex.
Yeah, lots of other snakes do rattle or shake their tails when they get nervous. If you catch a gopher snake or get it really upset and nervous, its tail will shiver. And if it's in dry leaves, it'll even sound a bit like a rattlesnake.
Interesting, very interesting.
Well, I was gonna say I did have a real life snake encounter. I was just going to mention. I was at. So here's my tidbit. I was at where was it? The Sierra Retreat Center in Malibu, Franciscan Retreat Center, and you go out into the big garden area. And I was sitting on a path writing in my journal, and I look ahead, and on this sort of sandy path were 2 snakes, and they were completely intertwined with each other. And as they were intertwined, they were traveling down the path together. And so, I mean, obviously it was spring. So, put 2 and 2 together, but it was the most beautiful and hypnotic thing I've seen, just to see them like perfectly coiled around each other as they traveled down the path. It was just amazing.
They were dancing. That is so cool.
Yeah. So that's what the kids are calling it nowadays. Yeah.
Anybody else have a tidbit to share about anything?
Yes, I have some tidbits of snakes. I have to admit that I don't like them. and I am afraid and repelled. Last summer, we were all in isolation. In 2019, I was with my family, 6 people, hiking in the San Simeon Peninsula, which is an extremely beautiful place. It's open to the public, but it's not really, doesn't have a lot of visitors. And as we walked on the path, my grandson, who was the first in line, saw it is a snake here. Then we all stopped, like in the cartoons, one into the each other, and we looked. The first moment, I could not see it. It was so well blended into the dry grass, and there were some little rocks. It is really very undeveloped, very natural habitat. So everybody else who is more knowledgeable than I am, and my little granddaughter, she's not afraid of anything. She went close with her camera and took pictures and pictures. I don't know if it was slow because it was really cold that day, or it was dead, or what was it, because it didn't really move at all. Not advancing or getting nervous or didn't have any reaction to all of us looking there. And then from down where the rocks are by the ocean, it was this group of fishermen, well, amateur fishermen, coming up, and we told them, yeah, it is a rattlesnake here. So everybody else come and look at it. They didn't react, so I don't know exactly what happened. So this is one story, but another story was really amazing. I was with my son at the Jurupa Natural Center. I don't know if you know where that is. It's on 60 going west. So I don't know what they are doing now, but back then, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, actually, it was really very interesting place for the kids. So it was one of those school outings. So I was a mother, the company, the teacher and everything. And all of a sudden, we hear above us hawks crying, really sharp, really sharp. And then when we looked up, they were those 2 hawks. I don't know, I'm calling them hawks, but probably, I don't know exactly what bird of prey was. They both hung on a snake, and both of them were pulling on each other to get that snake. So it was their prey. It was an amazing sight. Of course, we didn't have any camera or anything. So it is in our minds. And sometimes I ask my son, do you remember that little event there? Yeah, that was amazing to see those 2 birds of prey pulling on that snake. That was one of the things that I think is worth mentioning.
In that area, yes, there would be hawks, so that is possible.
Yeah.
I have a couple of stories, but I'll share this one. But I have to preface it with, I was at the Storytelling Festival in Ojai with 2 friends, and we were staying in a retreat house, but it had cabins up the hill, and we had rented 2 of the cabins. So before we got there, we were talking about hugs because my singles group would hug each other, and they had made a no dating rule before, but because of the hugging situation, they made a 3-second rule. So if you didn't want them to hug you any longer than 3 seconds, you could say, okay, that's enough. But get back to the story. When we get to the cabin, the sun's starting to go down. It's starting to get a little bit dark, and we're walking down this little trail up to where the 2 cabins are. And we check out the first cabin, and then we go to the second cabin where Lucy's going to stay. And all of a sudden, there's this huge, I mean, he was fat. He was probably 5 feet long, yellow snake. He was yellow. And When we were talking about the hugs, Teresa said, oh, she doesn't like to be hugged. She doesn't like to be hugged at all. And when her roommate hugs her, she had a male roommate, 3 roommates, and one of them was male. She would like be, that's enough, that's enough. So we're going up there and all of a sudden we see this snake and Teresa climbs up on Lucy and is latched to the top half of her body and does not let go. And she won't let go. And the snake just slowly went away. And then we went back to the cabin. But it was hilarious. It was my cartoon for the day. It was fun.
A long hug.
Yes, yeah, she was given a very long hug and I'm like,
Full body.
but she just climbed right up on her like a kid would. It was funny. It was hilarious.
Have any of the rest of you seen the snakes out at the Topanga Banjo Fiddle contest?
No.
There are rattlesnakes that are native to that area, but they are the most laid-back rattlesnakes you could imagine because the park rangers up there kind of know them, and if they get too close to people or to dogs, the rangers have forked sticks that they use to carry the snake away from whoever it is they're not supposed to be close to. Because a dog like will get scared and might attack the snake and get bitten and things like that. But
Yeah.
these snakes don't attack people. They just kind of, when there's a big event there and there are a lot of people, it's as if they're like, huh, wonder what this is. And they're kind of looking around, which is
They
weird.
probably come for the music, huh?
Well, supposedly they won't pick up anything except the rhythm from like percussion stuff because they can sense
That's right.
that kind of sound. But yeah, they don't really listen for sound because they don't have the fully developed
right.
ears.
Walter was
But
just
it's
telling
really
us that.
funny
Huh.
that the park rangers pretty much know these snakes by now and just pick them up with these fork sticks and move them.
That's hilarious.
I don't know if they're
My-
still there because they were in the area that the fire went through a couple of years ago. So I don't know how many of them survived. But it was kind of a running gag of like, if your dog looks like it's going to bark at a snake, hold on to your dog.
Yeah. My son just got he's got 2 little kids. They got a rabbit and the rabbit is trained to go in a kitty litter box, but you can't use kitty litter because it's too dusty. And it like runs around the house free and goes in the kitty litter box. I didn't know they
Wow.
could do that. And it has a little house and they'll tell it to come and it comes and it nuzzles like a cat. Like I've never.
Wow.
It was going towards the door because the door was open and the mom said, Carrie said, no, no, no. And it turned around, it looked at her like what? And when she was outside, it was up on its 2 arms and like making noises at her. It's just, I can't fathom that.
I'm amazed.
Her
Yeah.
rabbit is just a dumb rabbit.
Now, one of my friends had rabbits and cats in the same household, and it was really fun to watch because you're right, they have different litter boxes, but they both had litter boxes.
You just don't think of them as being intelligent like that.
Oh, they are. They just pretend they're not. They're intelligent except about food. When I was a kid, I had a rabbit, and it basically died from the things that it ate that were not really food. Because
that's the problem, is it will chew on things.
yeah,
So.
it would taste anything, no matter how bad an idea it was.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
I'd be afraid of electrical cords.
My story has to do with
Yeah.
rats.
Oh, okay. I've got a rat, so go on.
I was the leader of the Girl Scout troop up at La Casita one night. And the plan was for us each to bring a little something to add to a thing called gorp, nuts and M&Ms and whatever. But nobody brought a little box. We had 10 people and everybody brought the family size of chocolate chips and the family size of almonds. So we had it in a huge kitchen garbage bag. And then in the night, something made holes in it and it was strewn all around and nobody would eat any of it, naturally. That was my great plan. How about Chris? Do you have an animal story? You've got dog stories, I'm sure.
Can you unmute, Chris?
She's gone.
Chris, are you there?
Either that or she's being shy.
I'm here. I'm washing dishes and listening to you with headphones so that it doesn't bother John's hearing. It starts squealing otherwise.
Oh,
Anyway, my snake story is when I was in middle school and I had joined the orchestra. And in order to learn how to play a flute, the teacher gave me the end that has the hole in it without the rest of the flute and said, blow on this until you can make a sound. And stuck me and one of the other students, a boy, in this big room where all the instruments were stored. And he brought in a bag, a paper bag one time while we were practicing. And then in the middle of class, he said to me, oh no, my snake got out. And you know, instruments and shelves, and there were so many nooks and crannies. He never found that snake. And I
Whoa.
realized, what?
That's terrible.
What did you say? I couldn't hear you.
I said, oh,
Yeah, oh, is right. And the other snake story is I was on Mount Baldy at the Chapman Ranch, and I was sitting at a wheel, a pottery wheel, and one of the leaders, Pat Chapman, came up to me and said, Chris, there's a snake under this stone that's near where your wheel is, and I want you to hold this stick, squeeze it, and hold it over the baby snake, and then catch it. And I did, and the snake was about that long, but about as long, big around as my little finger. And we caught that snake and relocated it. And none of the children in the classes knew it was anywhere around. That's all I know about snakes. And somebody's disappearing.
no, I've got a migraine. If I may disappear altogether. And so I turned out the light to see if that would help make a difference. But staring at the screen just makes it really bad. It keeps coming back in waves. So anyway, I may just finally have to depart.
Just mute and turn off all the lights and your picture, and we'll just
Yeah.
listen.
Otherwise, I'm just sort of this ghostly face.
Yes, it's really
Yeah,
kind of
it's
interesting.
awesome. Bye-bye, I'm going back to dishes, but I'm listening.
Okay, go ahead
Hope
and
you
mute.
feel
Yeah,
better.
there we go. Okay, so who has a story they'd like to tell? I'll tell one, or Nick, go ahead.
All right, well, this, I have to lead into this by saying that I'm doing a program this Friday night, which is how I started looking at this story for what it was, because I'm doing a program for the Pasadena Art Night, which is normally an in-person event that's huge, but it's still being done virtually. And for the Pasadena Museum of History, they asked me to do a program related to the planet Mars because of the JPL being involved with the new Mars rover and all of that stuff, and Mars being in the news. And so I started looking up some of the things about the legends having to do with Mars and the Roman viewpoints about Mars. Now, you have to understand that the Greek god of war and the Roman god of war were not really the same thing. And one of the things about it that's different is the Greek god of war. You have to look at the Greeks' attitude about war. For them, war was something that was very brief, very destructive. You either lost and horrible things happened, or you won and horrible things happened. So for them, the god of war was this great, chaotic, destructive figure running all through the Greek myths. Ares was not a nice guy. Mars, though, Mars was the god of war for a people who used war to set up one of the biggest empires in human history that depended on military might to keep the peace. And so to them, Mars was a god of war to bring about peace. And this was a fascinating concept in the way they viewed it. And so one of the things that happened was, if you look at the statues and the different references to Mars, there are a zillion different names for Mars and subtitles for Mars based on why the statue was built and why that particular thing. For instance, they spent so long fighting against the various Celtic peoples. There were versions of Mars that were nicknamed for all of the Celtic gods and major figures. And so there are statues all through modern France and the British Isles and references to things like that. One of them, though, had always puzzled me because there was a version of Mars where the name just didn't make sense in the context of the way Mars was treated in all of the other stories. And it's because there's one version of Mars where there were great statues built by Caesar Augustus. The name basically translates as Mars, the Avenger. It's like, what the heck was the story behind that? And finally today, I learned the story about why the famous statue is called Mars the Avenger. It seems that that was the version of Mars that Caesar Augustus brought into being after the battle where he defeated the guys who had stabbed Julius Caesar. And he wanted to find a way to commemorate that without naming it after Julius Caesar in any way, but to make sure that people remembered that that was why that version of the Mars statue was built. It was to avenge the death of Julius Caesar. And see, that's the kind of thing that you have in the Mars legends, where they're so interwoven with the culture and the history. And that's also when I realized that to the Roman people, Mars was the grandfather of the Romans. Because you see, Romulus and Remus were children of Mars by a human woman. Now, the fact was, he kind of raped her while she was asleep, but he had a good reason, because he was really ticked off with the king who had caused her to be sent off to become one of the Vestal virgins and isolated the rest of her family and exiled them. And he wanted her to have children who were heirs to the throne of the bad king. And, you know, she was in a temple. He was a god. These kind of things happen. And that was how Romulus and Remus came to be. But the funny part is they ended up founding their own city instead of going back and taking over the one where their family were heirs to the throne. And so Rome was kind of the accidental result of Mars planning something else entirely. So just like humans having unintended consequences, so can gods, apparently. And by the way, if you look at the legends of Romulus and Remus, one of the arguments about which hill to build the center of Rome on. And the one where Romulus was building a little wall to show where he wanted it to be, archaeologists have found the remnants of a wall that dates to roughly the legendary founding of Rome by Romulus and Remus as far as the dates. So were Romulus and Remus real people, or were they fictionalized versions of real people? I don't know, but I think Mars is probably highly amused that they found evidence to Romulus existing.
All right, The Joy of the Princess, and it comes from a very interesting book called Dancing on Blades. And it's rare and exquisite folktales from the Carpathian Mountains. And it's just full of wonderful stories. And the person who compiled all these stories has a very interesting story to tell about how she got them as well. There is one caveat in the book, and she says that you're free to share these stories with whoever you want, perform them, but you cannot record them. So after the recording is finished, I'm going to erase my recording of this before I post it on YouTube. I can use iMovie and edit it out. So if you happen to watch the recording of this session later, you'll notice it's missing me. But Barbara can explain the story. I don't want to infringe on copyright. What's that?
But show the book and say you told this story, and so that, yeah, so it'll be documented. That'll be cool.
Well, I can probably
version, yeah.
I'll cut out my telling of the story, but I'll leave that part where I explained about it.
Oh, there you go. That's cool.
Just now.
That's cool. I have a princess story. So I take you to the castle with Princess Milani. Princess Milani was very, very pretty. She was the prettiest princess they had ever seen. Princess Milani was very petite. She had tiny little hands and a thin little waist, and her feet were so small that she wore child slippers. But her voice was also very tiny. But she was so pretty. Milana loved to sit in the garden and sing with the orioles in the morning with her tiny little voice, which was, well, not so pretty. It was kind of squeaky, and it could be heard from the road that paralleled the garden hedge from where she loved to sit in the rose garden. Well, folks would stop and watch the princess, for she was surely something to look at. And when she sang, well, they just ignored her awful singing. Now there was a prince named Derek, and he would come and do business with her father, the king. And when Milana would see Derek, her heart would skip a beat, for she was smitten with this fine-looking young man. She would be quiet and watch him as he rode tall on a strutting stallion with his entourage of noblemen, hoping that he would notice her. She was aware of her voice, that it wasn't, well, annoying, and so she was careful not to say a word. If he were to look her way, she would just smile and wave. There was a jaybird that used to visit the garden in the late afternoons. He would sing from his perch and in the trees, and Milana loved to hear him sing. Why, he sang more beautiful than the orioles. The princess closed her eyes as she listened to the jaybird listening in the distance one afternoon. She heard it get closer and closer, and when she opened her eyes, he was sitting right there at the edge of the pond. She said, "Oh, your singing is so beautiful. I wish I could make beautiful sounds like that." And the blue jay looked at her and said, "Really?" Well, I can tell you how surprised she was when she heard the jay talk. Princess Milani was astounded. "Oh my, you have a beautiful voice," she said in her squeaky little voice. "I wish I had a beautiful voice like yours." The jaybird looked around and said, "Well, maybe we could work on an arrangement." And so it was. Princess Milani and the jaybird negotiated and settled on terms. The princess would build an enclosure in the rose garden that was heated in the wintertime, so the jaybird would not have to fly south for every winter, and would be fed a fine assortment of nuts and seeds and berries. The jaybird would give the princess a beautiful voice. The jaybird told the princess to meet him in the enchanted pond at 3 a.m. where the magic could take place, because you can't do magic at the enchanted pond at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You need the moonlight, and the fairies only work in the wee hours of the morning. And he said, "Don't be late." So that night, the princess went to bed early and woke up in the middle of the night to journey to the enchanted pond. She looked out her window and could see that the moon was full and there was wispy fog hovering over close to the ground. She grabbed a silken blue shawl to keep warm. As she left, she covered her head and shoulders so no one would recognize her. When she arrived at the enchanted pond, the frogs were croaking loudly. The water was still and the full moon's reflection was floating in the middle of the pond. She settled upon a rock and waited a short time for the jaybird to arrive. He startled her when she heard him speak behind her. She turned and greeted her new friend. The jaybird gave her a beautiful voice and then said in a squeaky wee voice, "Your shawl is beautiful, such a beautiful shade of blue." Princess Milani said, "Thank you." Her voice was lovely. She was so grateful. She took off the silk cloak and wrapped it around the jaybird and gave it to him in gratitude. And this is how the blue jay got his beautiful blue coat and his annoying sound. And that's a variant of a Japanese jairo, meaning second son. I don't know what that means. I wrote notes on it, but I don't know what that means.
Great story. Great story.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Anybody else have a story?
I can tell one.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I can tell one. Well, it's about a story about how the bear lost his tail. So I know there are many versions of those. So here is mine. It says from Romanian folklore. And it goes like this. It was a really cold winter day. Everything was covered in snow. Very cold, nothing to eat for anybody, animals or birds. And then the fox was dragging her feet and her tail by the side of the road, thinking that I am not gonna eat again tonight. Then all of a sudden, on the road, she sees coming this cart. And the cart was pulled by one horse and was driven by a peasant. So she stopped and started smelling the air, and it was this beautiful fish smell coming from the cart. She said, "Oh, it must be something to eat there. How can I get something there?" And she had this idea, "Oh, okay, I am gonna pretend I'm dead." And she lay in the middle of the road, so the cart and the horse will stumble over her. That is what happened. The horse stopped because he saw something on the road. The peasant got down, looked at it, and saw this pretty good looking fox laying down on the frozen road there. He got down and he looked at it and he said, "Well, maybe I should take it home and we can skin it and make a nice little coat for my wife, or maybe just a decoration for a coat for my wife." And he took the frozen fox and he threw it in the back of his cart. The cart was full with fish. He went fishing and he was very successful, and he had a lot of fish in that cart. That was heaven. The fox started pushing and pushing the fish down from the cart, and all the way, by the time the peasant got to his home, the cart was empty. The fox was not there because he jumped off again with the last fish, and that was it. The night was coming down, so was nothing to do. Just go inside the house and try to make it. The fox, she got all her fish, put them close to her home, to her burrow, and she had a wonderful time for a few days. One of these days, still cold, still winter, still nothing to eat, the bear stepped by, he walked by her burrow, and he feels this delicious smell, and he asked her, "Hey, Sister Fox, what do you have there?" She said, "Well, I went fishing and I got some fish, but I am almost done with it. I don't need hardly anything left to share." "Well, but how did you do it? How did you get all these fish? How did you fish?" "Oh," she said, "it's very easy, very easy. You go during the day when it is a little warmer, and find where, go at the lake, the pond, and find a spot where the ice is a little bit thinner. Stick your tail in and leave it there for over the night. And in the morning, you pull your tail full with beautiful fish. Excuse me. Excuse me. So this is what he did. He went to the pond, looked for a thinner ice, did everything the fox did, told him to do. Night, very cold, but he is suffering there, knowing that it is a reward at the end. And then in the morning, start pulling the tail, nothing comes out. He start pulling with all his might, and then finally he gets free with his tail stuck in the ice. He has no tail. He's desperate. He is hungry, no tail. He's in pain. Okay, you know what? I am going to teach this fox a lesson. So she is not going to go around and trick people in the forest. She needs to learn her lesson. Well, the fox is known to be kind of a tricky. She likes to tell tall tales. So he gets a crooked bat somewhere in the forest, and he goes to the fox burrow, and he puts his butt inside her opening and start agitating that bat to catch the fox somehow. And that bat had a little crook at the end, so he was hoping to catch the fox and pull it out. And while he was moving that bat all over the fox burrow, he cut her leg and he started pulling. At that time, when the fox felt that her leg was being pulled and she's going to be pulled out, she started yelling, kind of laughing. Oh my God, look at you. You tried to get me out, but you know what you did? You hook one of those tree roots that is around my burrow. So just keep pulling it, keep pulling it. And well, he got discouraged. And I said, well, why am I pulling here? I didn't catch anything. And then let it go and start going around. He didn't see a thing, but he was going around with his crooked bat. And then finally, he caught something. Well, what he got one of the roots that were underground, and he started pulling on that. And the fox started crying and screaming and crying, let my leg, you are gonna break my leg, let me go, I'm not gonna do anything bad to you from now on, please let me go, please let me go. But then when he heard that, he started pulling harder and harder, hoping to get her out. And while he was pulling that hard, the bat broke. So he just let it go, and he got away without a tail and hungry. And the fox is still there and still probably playing tricks to the forest people. That's the story.
Yep, Fox the trickster.
Yeah.
like Coyote the trickster.
Yeah. Yes.
Different.
There are actually a lot of good people that are tricksters.
Yeah. Great story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tale of a tale.
Anybody else
you.
have a story? Okay, Walter, go for it.
All right, I'm going to try. This is my adaptation of a short story written by D.H. Lawrence, a British writer. He wrote it in 1928. Although the story is kind of weird, and it seems almost as if it was written by Rod Serling for Twilight Zone. It's a little different. There once was a woman who was beautiful, and she started out life with all the advantages. But she had no luck. She married young for love, but soon that love turned to dust. She had 3 wonderful children, but she didn't love them. She treated them kindly, so much so that others thought she adored them. But the children knew better. They could see it in her eyes. There was the oldest, Paul, 6 years old, very handsome lad. He had curly blonde hair and intelligent, very intense blue eyes. They all lived together in a very grand house. They had servants, they had a nanny, they had a gardener named Bassett, and they lived in style, and they had expensive tastes, and they felt it was necessary because they wanted to sustain their social position. However, they really couldn't afford it. The mother only had a small income from a family inheritance, and the husband worked in some office downtown, but he failed to make progress in his career, and he never made the kind of money that he expected or felt he deserved, and certainly needed. As a result, there was a kind of anxiety that hung around the house, a feeling of not ever being enough money. And that's how the house came to be haunted by a voice that whispered, "More money. There must be more money." Now, the children heard it all the time, especially in the nursery around their expensive toys. Somewhere, maybe near the giant dollhouse for the girls and the wooden rocking horse for Paul. When the whispering became very annoying, the children would sometimes stop their play, look up silently at each other and glance at each other's eyes as if to say, "I heard that, did you?" And then they would continue their play. Now, one day, Paul went to his mother and asked her why they didn't have a car of their own and a driver like their Uncle Oscar. And the mother said, "It's because we're from the poor side of the family." He said, "Why are we poor, mother?" She said, "Because we have no luck." He said, "Is luck money?" She said, "No, luck isn't money, but luck is how you get money. That's why being lucky is even better than being rich. If you're rich, you may lose your money, but if you're lucky, even if you lose it, you can get more." "But isn't Daddy lucky?" he asked. "Very unlucky indeed, I should say." "But aren't you lucky, mother?" "No woman can be lucky if she's married to an unlucky husband," she said. "Why are some people lucky and others not?" he asked. No one knows, except God, perhaps, but he doesn't tell." And then Paul said, "Well, I'm lucky, mother." He really didn't even know why he said that, but she said, "I certainly hope it's true." He spent the rest of the day in his childish little way, searching the house for luck. He looked in all the rooms, he looked in the drawers and cupboards, but how does one find luck? He finally grew tired of the exercise and got on his little rocking horse and rocked slowly back and forth, thinking about how to get luck. Then he's got an idea. He got off his horse and stood squarely in front of its face and looked right into its black, glossy, painted eyes and said, "Take me to where there's luck. We must have luck. We must make mother happy and make the voices stop." And then he got on his little horse and he rode with purpose. He rode very hard, back and forth, rocking as far as he could go. And soon his eyes kind of glazed over and he stared out into space. He did this until he was exhausted. And he did it day after day. And when he did, his little sisters would pack up their dolls and leave the room. He frightened them. And Nanny, when she came by and saw him riding his mad little rides, she would stand at the doorway with her hands on her hips, thinking, "This is just not right. There's something very unnatural about the way this boy is playing." and it disturbed her, but fascinated her. One day, as he was riding and Nanny was watching, he stopped. He got off his little horse, and then he saw Nanny standing there. And with a little smile on his face, he said, "Well, I got there." "Got where, Master Paul?" she asked. To where I wanted to go," he said mysteriously. Well, he continued to ride his little horse until a few weeks later, Uncle Oscar arrived, wearing a sharply tailored suit, derby, and smoking a cigar. He came in the nursery and saw Paul riding his little horse, and he said, "Whoa, hold on there, son. You're going to break that toy." Paul stopped, got off his horse, and said, "Oh, it won't break, Uncle. I always ride like this." "You do? Well, what's your horse's name?" he asked. Hasn't got one," Paul answered. "Well, I'm sure if we think about it, we can put our heads together and come up with a suitable name," he said. Actually, he's got different names at different times," he said. "Really? Just last week, his name was Sebastopol." "Sebastopol," Uncle Oscar said. "That's very curious. That just happens to be the name of the horse that won at Ascot last week." "I know," said Paul. "You know? How could a little boy like you know about racehorses?" "Bassett taught me. Bassett knows everything about racehorses. And you must keep this a secret, Uncle. But we've been laying bets, and sometimes we win." "Really? How much did you win?" "Well, Sebastopol won me 300. 300 pennies, I suppose." "No, 300 pounds, Uncle." "Really? But you mustn't tell Mummy anything. We've won over 1,800 pounds. You see, when I'm sure, we win. It's only when I'm not sure that we go down." "Well, what are you going to do with all that money?" "I'm going to lay it on Daffodil for the Derby." "Daffodil?" Now, Uncle Oscar knew a lot about racehorses, and he knew that Daffodil was a very obscure horse with a spotty record, and the odds against winning were 14-1. "You'll be throwing your money away," he said. "No, Uncle, I'm sure it's Daffodil." And so the little boy, with Bassett's help, placed a large bet on Daffodil for the Derby, and it won, and he made a fortune. Uncle Oscar came right back and said, he wanted to know how the devil was that little boy doing this. And he also thought he might get a tip for the next race. "What are you going to do with all that money?" he asked. "Well, I want to give a lot of it to Mother, to make the voices stop, and to make her happy." Well, Uncle Oscar didn't know anything about the voices, but he did take the money and he put it in the bank, and he took a large portion of it, and he had his lawyer draw up a letter saying that it was a gift from a relative so that he wouldn't know it's the little boy who did it. And when she got the check, she spent it on everything: new drapes, new furnishings, expensive clothing, jewelry. But the voices didn't stop. In fact, the house went mad with voices. It was like a chorus of frogs on a spring evening. "More money. There must be more money." So Paul was desperate. What could he do? He decided he must have a really big win and get enough money to finally silence the voices. So he decided to get on his horse, and he rode, hardest he's ever ridden, back and forth on his horse. But he had a very hard time getting there to where there was luck. He neglected everything. He rode himself to exhaustion. He wasn't eating properly. He was getting thin and pale. His mother was becoming worried about him. And then one day, she stood at the doorway watching him, very disturbed, as he was rocking back and forth on his mad little ride. And he suddenly stopped, looked at Mother, and said in a weak voice, it's Malabar. Tell Bassett it's Malabar. And so he collapsed, fell off the horse, and hit his head hard on the floor. She scooped him up and put him into bed. And Bassett was summoned quickly and said, what is all this about? And seeing the condition of the poor boy, he told the whole story. And suddenly, the mother was, something aroused in the mother. It was a long dormant maternal instinct. She was a tempest of emotions and thoughts, guilt, remorse, pity, and love for the first time. She sat by that little boy's bed all night long. She spoke nothing but comforting words, hoping he would get better. The next morning, the sunlight came through the window, and the boy woke up and his eyes were clear, and he seemed to be much better. But the first thing he said was, did Malabar win, Mother? She said, I don't care if he won. From now on in this home, you, your father, and your sisters are the only things of value in this house. And the voices never returned.
All right, that was great. So who wrote that?
D.H. Lawrence.
Huh. That is wonderful.
Where'd you find that?
Actually, I read it when I was in college, but I had to look it up again to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
That story is called The Rocking Horse Winter.
The Rocking Horse
One of the
Winter.
assignments at Citrus that was required for freshman English.
Well, I altered it a bit. Because it's too depressing the way it's written. So
Walter, last time you had a really wonderful story. And do you have the title of that? You said that it was a story published in the New Yorker in the 30s. Could
yes.
you?
It's a part of a collection, so it might be hard to find the individual story.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to look up, I don't remember the name of the book, but the author is James Thurber, Thurber.
Can you spell the last name again, please?
Yes, Thurber.
He's a well-known author.
Yes, he's written a huge number of short stories. I mean, he wrote for decades.
All right, thank you.
And of course, you can listen to Walter telling that story if you go to our YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you keep them there or they
Yes,
go
yes, it's
away.
on the YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know how to do that, but I thought they stay there just for the months.
Yeah, every recording since January of our story swaps is up there.
Uh-huh. Oh, all right. Thank you. I will. Actually, I will.
And I also updated my, I updated the England Valley Storytellers website, and under resources, the link at the bottom of the main page says storytelling resources. If you click on that, there's a section that has 3 YouTube channels: ours, San Diego's, and the SAC, Storytelling Association of California. So there are links to all 3 of those YouTube channels and a wealth of wonderful stories.
Or I will take a look at it. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a story, Barbara? Not tonight. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much does it. Any announcements other than the announcement I just made about the webpage? Yeah, Nick, unmute yourself.
Yes, the Earth Up conference that I was working on, that Karen Golden and Marilyn McPhee and I were all working on this last weekend, is going to be available as downloads Some of it's free. The things based on the Margaret Reed MacDonald stories, you can get those for free. But if you want to actually support the conference, it turned out to be really great. You can still buy in, and anytime up through a week from tonight, you can join the conference and just download all the videos. The videos are being posted. The first ones, I think, just started going up, and they'll be available to watch until 2 weeks after the last one is posted. So basically sometime, if you buy in now, you can watch them up through early May because they're being posted one section at a time. It was a lot of fun to work on. I hope you get a chance to watch the keynote address, which was with Jane Yolen, because you'll get to find out she has published 400 books.
Ooh.
And the thing that really amazed me was that that leaves her with 134 unsold manuscripts that she's written over the years. And she read one of those to the conference after she gave her actual talk to get feedback on what people thought about publishing and whether that was a good story or not. And there are things like that all through the conference, little snippets, but there are also these eco tours of different places in the world where people in the Arctic and in Brazil and places like that filmed the places where they live and gave people a little idea of what life is like there. So if you get a chance, there is the full price is like $100, but if you don't have a lot of money, there is a super discount price because of the COVID shutdowns. That's like $35 or $40 to get access to all the videos. And it was just a great conference, really exhausting. I'm still catching up on sleep, but it was definitely worth all the effort that went into it. So I hope you guys get a chance to tune into that. And even if you don't want to pay money, watch the Margaret Reed MacDonald stuff, because these are storytellers from all over the world telling some of the stories from one of her books.
Nick, what was the name of the conference, and can you put the link in the chat, please?
Sure. It was called Earth Up, and if you go to storynet.org Earth and look for Earth Up, it'll be there. But I'll put in a link in the chat so you can find it quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I have an announcement. Marilyn McPhee, along with Tina Tamiyama, are coordinating the San Francisco Free Folk Festival, and I'm going to be one of the storytellers at that festival. She invited me to be a storyteller, so I'll be doing a 10-minute folktale. Haven't decided which one yet, but that date for that is, let's see, June 12th.
And what's the name of the event again?
San Francisco Free Folk Festival, and she hasn't sent me, I don't know if they have a web page about it. At some point they probably will. I've sent her a bio and a photo of me to include, but at this point I can't give you a link.
And it'll be virtual?
Yeah, it'll be a Zoom event, free, as the name implies, because it's called the San Francisco Free Folk Festival.
Oh yeah, when they hold it in person, it's huge.
SFFFF. Very cool.
Any other announcements? Okay, well, small group, but great stories.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Love you guys.
Thank you.
And we've learned so much about snakes tonight, too.
Yeah.
Oh, before we close out, I should let you know, because since she wasn't here tonight, RD has been having some serious health problems lately. I don't know, John, if you'd heard about that. He was originally working on Earth Up with us, but her doctor basically said, no, you have to cut back for a little while of everything, because she was getting these odd physical symptoms that were really pretty painful and difficult. So you may not see her for the next couple of meetings. I'm hoping she'll be back later, but unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago, she got really sick.
Yeah, I wondered why, because she was attending our Zoom meetings.
Yeah, and whatever it was, something just really flared up with her long-term condition that was bad enough that her doctor basically told her to stop doing things for a while, and even anything that put even the slightest bit of physical or mental stress on her, she had to back away from it.
She didn't get
Right.
any vaccines, did she?
No, but this is something that's completely different. It's she has a long-term illness that limits her mobility and ability to do stuff, and something suddenly flared up apparently,
Okay.
and so she was afraid that it was something even more serious than it really was because the symptoms were so sudden and so serious. But anyway, she was pretty upset at having to back out of Earth Up, and she, I think, has had to back out of everything for a little while.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
And I don't know why Ron Chick hasn't been here the last 2 months, because he never missed any meetings. So I'll have to find out. I always worry about people's spam blockers blocking my email announcements. I had a problem for a while with Elizabeth, wasn't getting stuff, but you're getting it now, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, sure. I get everything.
Yeah.
Some programs consider it spam if you put all the names in, because it sees a long list.
Well, I send 10 at a time.
Yeah.
So I cut down the number. So we have like 120 people on the email list. And I knew if I sent all 120, it'd be a problem. So I broke them down into groups of 10, and usually that's okay. But
Yeah, and you're putting them in the blind copy, right?
yes.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, it should be okay for that, because if you have them in the open addresses, even if it's 10 or 12, some of the spam filters are going, wait a minute.
Yeah. No, it's the only address. All the messages are addressed to me, and then everybody else is in the blind copy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing it the right way from what I saw. So it's not
Yeah.
that. But I'm hoping he's okay, because you're right. He's somebody who attends everything that's
Yes.
storytelling related.
And it's not like he doesn't know what night it is.
Yeah, right. It's always the second Tuesday.
So, yeah, hopefully.
With the shutdowns, I actually have missed a couple of things by losing track of what week it is.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lose 2 days a week. I don't know how, but I lose 2 days a week.
You're looking younger.
There you go.
Well, it's those 5-day weeks.
Yeah.
All the time I'm losing.
Yeah.
John, thank you for making it possible for us to be notified and reminded and
Yeah.
getting to be on.
It is helpful.
Yeah. Thank
You're very welcome. This group is important to me.
Oh, well,
We're glad.
likewise. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Bye.
Stop the
Bye,
recording.
good night.
Good night.
Have a good week, everyone. Bye.
Feel better, Adrian.
Bye.